All right, so good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. We're delighted to welcome you to the last town hall of the year. We had 380 people registered. You might know that we were on MS Teams, but we had so many people that kept on joining that we've moved to to Zoom now, which is slightly easier. And we have quite a busy agenda. We have a quick update. I've put it into the chat, a quick update of the ministerial conference anniversary and next steps, a few words on the Arise Africa meeting, the G20 campaign, then the gun violence report, then Pelotas Brazil by Joe, the Inspire Evidence Review by Madison, a few words on resource mobilization, and then farewell to Alex and Stephen, who are two of great colleagues that will be leaving at the end of the year. I actually might move the resource mobilization up earlier because I know that Brad has to leave quite early. Hi, Brad. So I will put you before the Arise Africa, right after the ministerial conference anniversary. And with that, I will hand over to you, Helen, for the ministerial conference anniversary roundup.
Thanks so much, Sabine. Hi, everyone. What a glorious afternoon to see all of your faces as we're approaching year end. What a year it has been. Many of you joined us and, in fact, were contributors and helped to kind of build energy around the anniversary event for the ministerial that happened on the 10th of November. There were 1,500 people registered, and we had participation and very lively engagement right the way through the event. So we were really thrilled about that. Everyone from ministers to celebrities, faith and funder leaders to survivors, youth advocates, children. We really felt like there was a very kind of compelling case both for what has happened in the past 12 months, but also looking forward to the coming 12 months. And for those of you that didn't join us for that event or just want to hear it one more time, we were really delighted that the government of Philippines has now confirmed and officially announced that they will host the second ever Global Ministerial Conference on Ending Violence Against Children in mid-November in 2026. We're incredibly thankful to the government of the Philippines for their leadership on that agenda. And I'm sure all of you will join us in looking forward to and preparing the ground for a kind of landmark ministerial in Manila. But that's just the event. Behind the scenes of that event, there's a huge amount of work that has been undertaken. And that was around ensuring that we had reporting progress updates from governments. So there are over 65 governments that undertook voluntary reporting on their pledge progress in quite some detail. There's also a whole host and array of videos from ministers and member states reporting on and reflecting on what they feel most proud of. And then also a kind of summary, we won't call it a report card, there's no judgment there, but a kind of summary of progress made. And I'd really encourage everyone to check in on the pledge platform. We can pop the links in the chat for you just to get a sense of the incredible change that's been happening with and for children in this past year, but also a reminder of where we need to move to and from. That was just the kind of official online anniversary event. As Sabine mentioned in the agenda, we're about to hear from many other groups who undertook lots of activity around the anniversary. And with that, I was about to hand to Arise Africa, but I think we're going to Brad, Sabine. Perfect. Bradley, over to you. And if you can introduce yourself to the group, that would be fantastic. Thanks so much.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And just a quick update. So, one as an introduction, my name is Bradley Miles, based here in Washington, D.C., and I work with a new initiative called the Safe Childhoods Initiative, SCI. Um, and maybe a handful of people on the call are familiar with this. But just kind of a preview heads up, there'll be kind of more information coming out about this next year. But there's a new philanthropic advisory effort that's been set up by 8 foundations in the space. It's a 4-person team. It's currently housed at an entity called Panorama Global. It's modeled after other domain-specific philanthropic advisory efforts like Climate Lead in the climate space and PRISM Initiative in the global reproductive health space. And it's basically a field-wide fundraising effort to try to advise new donors about giving opportunities in the space. So it's not fundraising for itself. It's not a pooled fund. It doesn't have kind of a self-interest. It's more of a field-focused entity that's trying to create uh, sh shorter learning curves for new donors to enter the space and for them to understand all the lanes of giving and all the organizations around the world that work on the issue and all the things that different organizations are ready for investment in. So there's a small team of a few of us that play this philanthropic advisory role where we're talking to new donors and trying to get them interested in giving to this issue area for the overall purpose of growing the overall pie of total philanthropic dollars being given to this issue. One clarification, I know this calls about all violence against children. The Safe Childhoods Initiative is specific to the type of sexual violence against children. So it's not all violence against children, it's just childhood sexual violence. But we're talking to private donors and trying to mobilize more funding for the space. Um, hasn't been announced yet. It's still in incubation mode throughout the past few months, but there'll be more information coming out next year. There's an executive director based in London, and then there's three colleagues who are here in DC, and I'm one of those three. So, Sabine, I know you're a bit familiar with it, and Helen, you are too, and a few other people on the call, but we'd be happy to share more as that comes out next year.
Thanks, Brad. I don't know if you're doing it on purpose, but you have this weird aura light around you, which is really suits you well because now it's even more. Now you're like, but I have to say, this is a little bit what it feels like. Weirdly, it feels like finally there's a bit of light shining on this area. And I've popped into the chat the link to the Safe Childhood Initiative. I've also popped into a chat an amazing report called A Pivotal Moment for Donors. Helen was talking about some of the progress we're making and that we have made since Bogota. It is a pivotal moment for donors. And we hope actually that the next conference will focus more on raising funds for our three breakthrough areas, raising funds for the field. So thanks so much, Brad, for the work that you're doing and the aura that you bring along with it, as well as the work that's been done by the Elevate Children Fund group, which is this great report, which I've also put into the chat. I just want to stop here to see if there's any questions, because I know Brad has to jump off. If there are any questions, just speak up. As always, you don't need to put your hand up. Just put your mic on or put it into the chat, either on the Safe Childhood Initiative or the Pivotal Moment for Donors report. Okay, well, Brad's put his email and his phone number. That's very nice of you. I don't see any hands up, so I am going to move on. Brad, thank you very much for your time. I know it's early and
Sure,
I know you've been
I could
on
stay for the
work
first
late.
30 minutes and then just have to jump. But thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thanks, Brad. We will, if there are no questions, move on to the Arise Africa, which happened the day after the 1 year anniversary. So the 10th of November, we had the 1 year anniversary, and the 11th of November, our colleagues from the Africa region, led by WHO and UNICEF, organized a regional forum. Over to you, Binta.
Thanks, Sabine. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a flu today. My name is Binta Sako. I work for WHO Regional Office for Africa, and I'm happy to share with you a snapshot of what we did as Arise Africa. We held this meeting in Addis Ababa. Let me see if I can share with you. I don't know if you see my screen.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, we can share. We can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can share my screen. Okay, good. So yeah, we had the Arise Africa meeting on the 11th to the 13th of November, which was the first convening to advance the Bogota commitments. And as mentioned already, was co-hosted by WHO, UNICEF, and ACPF. And we had 32 countries participate and bring in officials from Ministry of Social Affairs, Education, and Health. And we also worked closely with partners such as PLH and Coalition for Good Schools. And I think some of the people are on this call today. We had really very strong representation and engagement throughout the 3 days. I don't know what's going on with my slides, but anyway, we organized about 9 sessions, of course, focusing on the three breakthroughs, but also looking into the supporting or the enabling environment, and such as data systems, and making sure we had strong integration and coordination. And we set up discussions with the countries themselves, so representing the different government, but also with international experts and regional experts. So it was very rich in terms of learning and exchange of good practices. So we really heard strongly from the governments, and also was a meaningful engagement of youth. We had two representatives that were very vibrant and dynamic, and held us to account into making sure that the promises of Bogota and now Addis are really put into practice, and it's not only words. We had an event that was actually really a success, where we recognized the countries, highlighting what they did, because they shared with us their reports on the advancement of the pledges, and they were all recognized during the evening of the second day. I think they really appreciated being recognized as well. And in the final day, we had the outcome document. So this is a document that once again reaffirms the commitment of countries to advance the breakthroughs, and also make sure that the implementation are in accord with the local context, because we all recognize the specific situation of Africa, the specificities, and making sure that we are aligned. The RECs, and so the regional economic commissions, were all very present, and also shared their alignment with the Bogota pledges in general, and advancing ending violence against children initiatives as well. So they're all ready for the second ministerial conference, and looking forward to it. And as we continue, I think we all convened that there was a need to continue supporting countries, so that they can actually implement the pledges, what they pledge for in countries. So there was a recognition there was still a need for some technical support on this, especially around the data systems, and also scaling the breakthroughs, parenting and school initiatives, as well as we continue collaboration, and also making sure that we mobilize internal resources as well, and not this dependency on external financial resources. So in a nutshell, that's what the 3 days of Addis Arise Africa were. It was really, we missed a few of you, but I think it was great to see the dynamism from the teams, and really forward looking with the challenges that we know that we're facing currently. So yeah, I'll stop here, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate.
Thanks so much, Binta. We know that more and more going forward, regional initiatives are going to be so important. Global initiatives are more complicated, and regional and national is where it's going to happen. So really great to see this moving. The Americas also had a regional moment. The Philippines had a regional, or the Asian region had a regional moment in the Philippines. So it's really great. Thank you very much to the UNICEF and WHO colleagues. I would like to move on to the next. Please, if you have any questions or updates, I see Gemma also put an update from Safe to Learn.
Yeah, I had a question actually. Sorry, you said just jump in and not put the hand up, so sorry if I'm
Sorry, Gemma.
interrupting. But we had a quarterly meeting of Safe to Learn yesterday, and one of the topics that came up was that there's been so many fantastic regional meetings looking at progress against the pledges, and there's reports on all of those meetings available. Is there anywhere that either just puts all of the reports in one place, or synthesizes the learning perhaps by sector across? Because I think there's many partners who would really like to see that level of detail, which I know is very rich and in some of those reports.
I think what we as WHO can commit to doing is collecting the reports and putting them on the ministerial conference platform. I don't think we can commit to the analysis, which anyways will probably be done by topic, and so it's better to be done by the different communities of practice. But we will
we can do that if we can get them in one place. I think that would be great. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Gemma. Then I'd like to move on to our next agenda item. We stay in Africa. from Kanga from the Brave Movement and Serena from Safe Online. They did wonderful work around the G20 and the launch of the Third Richest Nation campaign. And I'll hand over to, I think, Kanga or Serena. Kanga, maybe you're on mute?
Yes, thank you so
There
much.
you go. Perfect.
I just wanted to turn on my video for you to see my face before I turn it off. I am currently in South Africa and it's really raining cats and dogs. So that's why my video is going to be off because of just data connectivity.
No problem. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So I wanted just to present around the third richest nation and also the overall G20 social summit that we happened to participate in during this G20 summit. So first and foremost, we had three things that we wanted to deliver during the G20 summit. First was the global launch of the third richest nation. Then we had a high-level political roundtable around financing aspects around online safety, which is by the coalition called Safe Digital Futures, that consists of Safe Online, Brave Movement, Plan International, Child Fund, Mtoto News, and World Vision. Then we also had a child-led intergenerational dialogue. I'll first start with the third richest nation. So the third richest nation came about that with the G20 countries, looking at the scope around violence against children, we lose over $7 trillion annually if we do not work again towards ending violence against children. So this was a campaign that we wanted to emphasize more around investing in children, because for the longest time we have implementation metrics of frameworks that are good. But now when it comes to implementation and especially on the resourcing of it, that's where we have issues. Then the other bit was around the shrinking donor space and looking around how do we look into domestic financing, where it's now national governments coming in and saying with child protection, we are now increasing their budgets. So we had this idea of coming up with a campaign and actually showcasing if you are investing in violence against, in ending violence against children, we are able to, literally to be able to reinvest the $7 trillion that we normally use and utilize it on other issues, such as whether it's online safety, whether it's on the global markets. But if we do not invest in children, then we keep on losing the $7 trillion. That is what this campaign was literally about. It was led by survivor advocates, allies, civil society policy makers, because we had a G20 task force that literally took time into looking at what this campaign would look like. So we had several launches. The first one, so we launched it on the 7th of November, which was coinciding with the first ministerial conference, just as a precursor or a lead up to the second ministerial conference and looking back at 1 year on. Then we had an alternate London takeover on the 17th, where we showed among the things that we have in the campaign is a fictional story where survivors are speaking around this third richest nation. What would it look like? It would have safety for children in the online space, in the offline space. And we had this launch in London, and just people were coming in to ask, what was this about? And just would ask them questions around what this would look like. So right now we've seen it go into different media engagements. And also at the G20 Social Summit, we're able to engage with different policymakers, just asking them if violence, if there was no violence against children, what would that world look like? And it was interesting even to hear from children how they were talking about they were able to go to school safely, they were able to engage in certain games, even like Roblox. So it was really interesting to hear about these conversations. Then after this, the second bit was around the Safe Digital Futures Roundtable, which we had several governments from the Africa region, namely South Africa, Zambia, Kenya. And with this Safe Digital Futures Roundtable, because South Africa was hosting this G20 summit, were able to co-host it with them. Some of the highlights of actually this roundtable around the country highlights, because we had even countries like Brazil that they were explaining around their launching of their policy on digital safety. We had like even Zambia sharing how they have posted their plan around online protection, and also like Kenya, Uganda, and also South Africa, looking around not only just frameworks and policies, but more around where are we investing and what does the expenditure look like. One of the punchlines that I wanted just to mention on this roundtable was one of the speakers mentioned that if it's not on the budget, then it's not a priority. So it's also looking around child protection. What does that look like? Then the second quote was around, we are not valuing children safely if we do not fund it. So it was really a big moment where we were seeing governments pledging and actually looking at how do they also meet their ministers of finances to ensure that child protection is really budgeted. Then lastly would be around the intergenerational dialogue with the Children 20, which was really critical because as we are working with the demography of children, it's important to also have the child participation. So we also went and presented to them the third richest nation, and we were asking them what will this campaign look like. And it was interesting to see and hear how they were saying they wanted presidents to be like the nation to have like a child president who would give, and also the ministers to be children. And also we got them into groups and they were showcasing some of the things that they were able to do with the ministries. So it was a real highlight in terms of showing how relatably that this third richest nation was also relevant to the children and how they're interested around matters around financing. So thank you so much.
Thanks a million, Kanga. And we've put into the chat, have a look at the video of the president address of the third richest nation. It gives you shivers. It's an AI makeup of a president speaking, but it's really very brilliant. And Serena, thank you also for putting into the chat the financing safe digital futures information. I don't know if you want to add anything, Serena?
No, thank you, Sabine. I'm also put in the chat the program of the high-level roundtable, which so it has more details about the objectives and the people that participated, including government representatives and financial institutions and other entities. We are, of course, available for more information. And also, I will put in the chat the link to expression of interest if you would like to be support the work of the coalition, because obviously, you know, the G20 is just the beginning of this engagement, and we're going to plan more work in 2026. So we are happy to hear from you in case you would like to join. Over.
Thank you very much, both the Brave Movement and Safe Online, for the wonderful work. So we've gone from global and pledges to Africa, from Africa to the G20 and financing. And now we're going to go into two slightly more niche areas, which is Dean Peacock going to present on the report on gun violence. And then after, Joe Murray will be presenting on the work of Pelotas in Brazil. So over to you, Dean.
Great. Thank you so much, Sabine. And it's a absolute pleasure to be here, especially with so many faces that I recognize. So I'm Dean Peacock, based at the University of Cape Town, and also with the brand new Global Coalition for WHO Action on Gun Violence. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a report that we are about to publish, co-published by 7 organizations, the Gender Center at the Geneva Graduate Institute, School of Public Health at University of Cape Town, the Violence, Inequality and Power Lab at the University of San Diego, Gun Free South Africa, the Comprehensive Injury Center, and Salva in Brazil. And our report really focuses on gun violence and analyzes the extent to which the World Health Organization over the last 78 years has addressed gun violence. And we did this because we know that gun violence is a major determinant of health and well-being, including for children. And I just want to walk you through a few of the key points from the report as they pertain to violence against children. As you'll no doubt know, gun violence is now a leading cause of death for children and adolescents in a growing number of countries, especially in the Americas, but increasingly also in South Africa. We see a growing number of young people being killed by gun violence. We also know that gun violence has all sorts of consequences, negative consequences for young people when they're exposed to gun violence in the home, at school, or in their communities. And that those consequences are lifelong for health, for learning, for emotional development, and even, in fact, for employment. We also know, and I think there's been lots of great work done on this intersection, that gun violence affects all people within a family context. Gun violence is very closely linked to femicide. It is in many ways a neglected dynamic within abusive relationships. It lends itself very quickly to coercive control. And this, of course, dramatically increases chronic stress for children. And then suicide and guns represent a very particular risk. The risk of fatality is exponentially higher when a gun is used, and adolescence, childhood is a time when people are more likely to make impulsive decisions to attempt suicide, and when they use a gun, much more likely to be successful. So that is some of the evidence that we highlight. And what we then did was we looked at World Health Assembly resolutions. We ran an analysis of all nearly 2,500 World Health Assembly resolutions since inception, so since the late 1940s. And we were able to see that, in fact, gun violence hasn't been included in any of the language in any of the resolutions. And so we see both a gap and a tremendous opportunity. We then analyzed publications by the World Health Organization and PAHO over the last 25 years. And what we saw was a very strong emphasis on gun violence initially, and then a gradual decrease in focus on gun violence as gun violence was integrated into INSPIRE and some of the other frameworks, although not very strongly. And in the context of the RESPECT framework on violence against women, it's not really there very much. We saw the same in the PAHO region, recent reports on adolescent health across the Americas, not mentioning gun violence at all, despite the role that it plays. So what we argue in the report is that there are these gaps in the ways in which global public health, including the WHO, has been dealing with gun violence. And we think that means there's an incredible opportunity for increased advocacy on gun violence as a cross-cutting issue. We were very glad to see gun violence feature in the recent updated Inspire evidence, and we essentially make just a few recommendations, or we make a number of reservations. I'll mention just a few of them. The first is we are calling on member states, civil society to organize for a World Health Assembly resolution on firearm violence with a strong focus on violence against children. We're also calling for an integration of firearm violence across a number of WHO's work areas, including Inspire, Respect, emergency care, including the continuum of care from first responder all the way through to people providing psychosocial support and organizing to address root causes of gun violence in local communities. And we're calling for attention to data systems on firearm injury, including femicide. The data on global femicide and gun violence is less robust than it could be. And then lastly, we're calling for the WHO to provide guidance on all of these issues, including restrictions on gender exploitative and youth targeted marketing of guns. So that's the report. The report is up on our brand new website. And in fact, today is the soft launch of the Global Coalition. And I'm going to turn to my colleague Steve Hargarten in just a moment to say a few words, but we've had an incredibly supportive response. We now, in the last few weeks, have had 50 organizations really from every region in the world join the coalition. And we have a steering committee of experts on violence prevention steering the campaign, some of them here on this call. And so, just wanted to convey our tremendous gratitude to Sabine and Alex and the team at the WHO who have provided detailed feedback, created opportunities like this, and met us in Geneva for, detailed feedback on the report. And so really want to extend our welcome and invite those of you to visit our website, which is whoaction.org, and you will find the report and the recommendations there. So if there's time, it would be great, Sabine, if Steve could just say a quick word. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Dean. And maybe just, Stephen, if I can, I will hand to you, if you can keep it really to 2 minutes, just to remind everyone, the aim of these town halls are to present, we're living under a tent where we're all trying to protect children, and there's so many different initiatives. So this is one of them that we felt needed to be brought to this space so that people, as Dean is saying, can join this movement. We would love nothing more than a World Health Assembly resolution on this topic, but it's not up to us to push, it's the member states to push. So do your advocacy, and I'll leave it to you, Stephen, if you can keep it to 2 minutes, because we have 3 more important agenda items.
I will keep it to less than that. It's a pleasure to be part of this. Timing is everything in terms of this initiative that adversely affects children, families, women, and youth, young males. So it's really a timely opportunity to work align with all organizations and countries to advance this to World Health Assembly resolution and beyond. And I think this is really the start of that work. So I will stop there, and maybe we have some time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I suggest that people put their questions in the chat for now. And just as a reminder, we're Costa Rica and Kenya and 6 other countries are now pushing very hard for a resolution on corporal punishment in the World Health Assembly this May. So it would be interesting if this year we have corporal punishment, next year or the year after we have gun violence going from one extreme to the other extreme. But without further ado, I'm moving on to Joe to give us an update on the work of Pelotas Brazil.
Thank you, Sabine. My name's Joe Murray. I'm a professor at the Federal University of Pelotas in Brazil. I'm going to give you a quick whirlwind tour of our research center in the south of Brazil, the Human Development and Violence Research Center. And we recently became a collaborating center with the WHO. And Pelotas is a city in the deep south of Brazil where we have a large program of research on violence. I've been here for 15 years, and it's also a city with a really interesting municipal government initiative to reduce violence. So briefly explain both. The main research we do are based around longitudinal research looking at life course consequences of violence against children, as well as determinants of violence. And we work on 4 very large birth cohort studies. They're large epidemiology studies. The first that started in 1982 and has been following all the children who were born in Pelotas City since that year. It's a total population cohort of around 5,000 children. And every 11 years, a new cohort has been set up. So we have 4 large cohort studies following all children who were born in the city of Pelotas. And you can see the timeline of assessments that have been made, and each one here has had very high follow-up rates into adulthood. And the nice thing about having repeated cohorts, which is unusual, is we can also start to look at time trends as well as life course dynamics in the same population. And within this population, children have been exposed to higher and higher levels of very serious community violence. Homicide trends have gone up enormously. As Dean was just outlining, this has an enormous impact for children in their communities as well as at home. And in fact, we've recently geocoded the youngest cohort, born in 2015, found that almost half had a homicide occur within 500 meters of their houses in their first 4 years of life. So within our research center, we have a lot of different projects based around these cohorts, as well as other ones looking at the basic epidemiology of violence, the consequences of it, the determinants, and evaluation of prevention initiatives. On the epidemiology, we ask both parents and as children grow older about their own experiences of violence, both in the home as well as outside. And there are very high rates through into adulthood. We also look at overlaps between experiences of violence between mothers and their own children and through the generations. On consequences, we're looking at the nuanced ways in which different types of violence, both in the home and outside the home, impact both on children's caregiving environment with detailed measures, observational assessments of parent-child interactions, for example, on early child development, on mental health outcomes, and children's own risk behaviors as they grow older, as well as health outcomes. We've got chronic stress measured by cortisol there on the right-hand side. When we're thinking about determinants of aggressive behaviors through childhood and more severe violence being practiced from adolescence onwards, take an ecological model to try to think about different areas of influence and drivers of this kind of behavior. It's very important in this context in particular, as most large longitudinal studies looking at determinants have taken place in high-income countries with lower levels of violence, that we really take seriously the wider social context in which this is occurring in Brazil, particularly the role of state violence and how children come to perceive the state institutions and get drawn into gangs and other difficult social processes. On the side of prevention, we, in terms of kind of life course prevention, we've been running a large randomized trial of 2 parenting programs kind of within the Inspire framework. And what's nice within this context is we've been able to nest this evaluation within our youngest cohort. So we're able to fill a gap that was clear within systematic reviews of low and middle income countries about longer term outcomes of these kinds of shorter lower resource interventions that are suitable for this kind of context. So we're now looking at a 3-year follow-up of the effects of these 2 early parenting programs, both aiming to reduce violence against children and build children's own resources for healthy development. And all of this is sat within a fascinating city where from 2017, the Pelotas Peace Pact was launched by a very inspiring mayor, Paula Mascarenhas, which built in a multi-sectorial health, education, social care, and criminal justice approach to violence prevention. And in fact, the 2 programs, parenting programs, were kind of instigated as public policy within this. So it's a fascinating context to be doing the research, and we've also been trying to evaluate the effects of this wider initiative for the society, for the city as a whole, seeing reductions in homicide rates, as well as looking at other outcomes of different types of violence and school dropout. So that's a very quick overview of the kinds of work we're doing. We're here to try and support the WHO in its efforts as best we can. There's a website here, and I'll put my email in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate it. I mean, fascinating, just the whole plethora, the longitudinal and the depth of the research. And you will see that sometimes we just showcase some of these programs, and please send along programs that you would like to showcase, especially that are evidence-based, that are linked to the breakthrough areas that we're pushing, that we're trying to showcase as much as possible. So don't hesitate, like Joe, to come to us if you want to present your project. Thanks again, Joe. And don't hesitate to reach out to Joe. He's put his email in the chat if you have any questions. And with that, I will hand over to our friends Madison and Greta on the Inspire review.
Thanks, Sabine. So I'll first pass to Greta to give a little bit of framing for us.
Great. And you'll share the slides, right, Madison?
Yes.
All right. So hello, everyone. It's so nice for us to be here, and thank you for giving us a little bit of time. So my name is Greta Massetti. I'm a professor in the School of Public Health at Georgia State University. And until just about a couple months ago, I was at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, where I had done for about 18 years, I'd been doing work on violence against children, primarily globally, and the impacts of violence on chronic disease and illness and infectious disease. And I have had the pleasure of working with WHO for many, many years on the development and release and update of Inspire 7 Strategies to End Violence Against Children, where I've been on the Secretariat group, the Global Leadership Group for Inspire, for since its inception. So just by way of background, Inspire was first released in July of 2016. And at that time, it was a reflection of the best available evidence on what is known that is effective in preventing violence against children. And it's now 10 years later. A lot of progress has been made in the field, both in terms of generating new evidence on what works, new programs, new evidence on impact on different populations. But we also know that the field has evolved in terms of new data on critical intersections, different forms of violence that tend to co-occur, new forms of violence that are emerging, particularly in digital and online spaces. And we have new data on from low resource settings. So a few years ago, we had kind of decided to embark on an evidence review to really strengthen our understanding of the current evidence that underpins Inspire, and to be able to have greater rigor, transparency, and clarity on the nature of that evidence. And so we have been doing this work for about 3 years. It has been a major lift, and we are so fortunate to have partnered with the University of Oxford, and Dr. Madison Little has led this work in a really a tremendous way. This work was just recently published online in the journal The Lancet Child and Adolescent Health. It will be fully available in the print version of the journal in January, and we're really hoping to engage the field in understanding how it reflects the current evidence and how we can continue to strengthen the evidence pipeline for what works to prevent violence against children, and how to really use this work to drive practice as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Madison, who is going to really delve into the details for us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Greta. So yes, as Greta mentioned, there were a number of considerations that went into updating the INSPIRE framework. And so our goal with this project was to incorporate the decade of new evidence into INSPIRE and to be able to provide clear recommendations on which interventions should be prioritized for implementation. Within that, we looked at 4 main forms of violence against children: child maltreatment, youth violence, intimate partner violence against adolescents, and sexual violence. We ultimately the goal was to then synthesize this evidence, and we found a huge body of evidence. More than 200 systematic reviews met the criteria for inclusion, and so this represented over 3,000 primary studies, which we then grouped and analyzed into more than 30 different intervention categories. We then took all of this data and we wanted to be able to rank interventions to be able to just figure out which interventions should be prioritized. And so this evidence decision matrix that we developed incorporates how much evidence there is, how strong and rigorous is the evidence, and do we see this consistency of effectiveness across country contexts. And what we did find is that not all interventions are consistently effective. So this really underscores the need for us to use the latest science in supporting decision-making. We found that across intervention categories, 60% of interventions had sufficient levels for prioritized implementation in high-income countries, but this data is much more limited in low and middle-income countries, where only 40% of interventions met this criteria. And so while the findings from the research can't comment on which interventions have a greater magnitude of impact, rather the evidence looks at what has the highest potential to effectively address violence against children. So to give just very broad overview highlights of the findings, looking at the interventions by outcomes, we saw that parenting programs have the strongest evidence in reducing child maltreatment, both through prevention as well as among households with histories of violence. Whole school approaches to violence prevention are effective in addressing youth violence, as well as providing cognitive behavioral therapy for young survivors. Within the other 2 domains of outcomes that we looked at, we saw that healthy romantic relationships education was most effective in reducing dating and intimate partner violence. And when we incorporate sexual violence, we also see strong evidence from Cash Plus programs combining cash transfers with youth-focused life skills training. The overview and conclusion of all of this is that INSPIRE works. We've undertaken the largest analysis to be able to look at the evidence supporting each of the INSPIRE strategies, and we see that each INSPIRE strategy has at least one intervention that meets the criteria for prioritized implementation. We also see that there's sufficient evidence to support an intervention in addressing each form of violence against children. And importantly, we didn't find any evidence of interventions that were consistently ineffective or harmful in the research. Also, looking at the evidence review as a whole and the diversity of interventions that we've been able to capture as part of the synthesis, it really shows that the strategies contain different interventions directed at different sectors. So there's an opportunity for everyone to have a role to play in using these interventions to effectively address violence against children. On the whole, I think that one of the strongest myths that this research breaks is this myth that there's very sparse evidence of what works in violence prevention. We have more evidence than ever on what works to effectively reduce violence against children, and we see that the evidence is also very consistent with the 3 breakthrough areas from the ministerial. So we see that there's been a significant amount of evidence over the past 10 years, particularly around parenting programs, whole school approaches, and cognitive behavioral therapy for young survivors. With that, as Greta mentioned, this research was just recently published in The Lancet Child and Adolescent Health. It's been published and is available open access, and I'll pop into the chat the links to the publications, a commentary that was commissioned by The Lancet led by Amber Peterman, as well as an executive summary that's been developed based on these findings. And lastly, this has been a huge effort with a wonderful team. I want to thank Greta and Alex and Sabine from WHO who are on the call with us today, as well as all of the other co-authors and the team of early career researchers who helped with this analysis as well. So with that, I will pass back to Sabine and Helen.
Thank you very much. And I just want to hugely thank you, Madison. I mean, I always say Madison is just a whiz kid. I don't know how he's gotten through thousands and thousands of research. In 18 months, you managed to really pull this together, which will make a huge difference to the field. So thank you, Madison, for all the hard work. We have 6 minutes left, and I want to take 6 important minutes to thank 2 people for whom this is their last town hall meeting. And those 2 people are Alex Butchart and Stephen Blight from WHO and UNICEF, respectively. I'm sure everybody here knows them well. And as I was preparing last night, I was thinking, so funny that they have 2 things in common. And sorry, after I will let you both speak, Alex and Stephen, because I, for one, I'm really going to miss you. And I was thinking, what do they have? They have so much in common in a weird way. And I've worked with you both for many years. And so I came to the finding that, in my view, you have 5 qualities and only 1 imperfection, both of you together. The first one quality is that you are whip smart. I think everybody can attest to that. Second, you have an amazing sense of humor, both of you. I mean, you always manage to get us laughing at the funniest moments. I can even just laugh thinking about the things that you have said in the past. Thirdly, you're both introverts, which is a quality, I would say, but something that you both share. You don't talk much, but when you talk, it's with the humor or with the whip smart statements. Fourth is, I think you're very caring for your families as much as your profession. Very often I hear you speaking about your families with so much love and warmth, which is so touching. And then the last one is that everything you do it with so much depth, which I think is maybe part of being an introvert. You do things with depth. So those are amazing qualities, and I'm sure you're wondering, what is it? What's the imperfection? And I think it's just a very personal one, is that I think I wish you would talk more. I'm always curious to know what's going on in your head. I wish I could just be in your brain. The number of times that I've had meetings with you or calls, or even with Helen and I, we say like, ask Alex to put it on paper, ask Stephen to put it on paper. We need to know what they're thinking. So we're really going to miss you. We wish you all the best with your families, with the next chapter. We hope that you bring the humor, the intelligence, the kindness, the depth to everything you're going to do going forward. And sorry, I'm taking a lot of space because I even feel emotional thinking of the 2 of you not being in this space anymore. But with that, I am going to be quiet, and I'll let you say something if you would like to, and others also if you would like to say something.
So Sabine, let me start by saying thank you very much to you for this beautiful introduction. And thanks so much to everyone on the call and the broader global violence prevention community. None of this is a one-person show. It's all a collective endeavor. And I'm going to end by saying I'm really excited by the fact that I'm totally excited by what I heard today. I want to start again. I don't want to end after the 30 years that I've been working in this field. Everything I've heard from Binta, from Joe, from Dean, from Madison, etc., from Greta, makes me want to get started all again and go back through all the 4 stages of the public health approach and so on and so forth, and get to that very big point that we all want to reach and need to reach, which is scaling up evidence-based interventions and ensuring that we have in place systemic, chronic, population-level monitoring of prevalence. I'm going to end on that very technical note, because if I start to get all touchy-feely, I might get emotional, etc., and that would be no good. So I'd like to thank everyone on the call more broadly, and with that, I hand it to Stephen. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. For years, UNICEF and WHO, myself with Alex, we've tried to be in sync, and we've always had a hard time in being in sync. I think we're now in sync in that what Alex said, I would like to echo. And I think finally, Alex, me and you are in sync that we both agreed to leave this at the same time. So we're in sync in terms of our retirement. So once again, thank you. Firstly to WHO for creating this space for the community to come together. Secondly, for all colleagues on the call, I mean, looking through the participants, I've known many of you for many years, and thank you for all you do to keep violence against children, high in the global public policy agenda. I met Alex first, I think it was, I don't even know if he remembers, it was in South Africa in, I think around 2009, something like that. And I was working with UNICEF South Africa at the time with child protection. And he came in talking about things like, public health approach, about, preventability of violence against children, what's an effective intervention. And, this was 2009, and this was actually really new. This was new, and it sort of knocked me off my chair listening to this, and it's been highly influential throughout my career. And just looking at how far we've come now, where these ideas are just so mainstream, not only amongst us as a community, but with governments these days. It just shows how much progress that's been made. So they're putting me out to pasture, but my replacement will be unveiled very soon. So you'll start to see a whole lot of new energy in this space. Over and out, I should say.
Yeah, so just last one. I mean, we're logging off today, but we just know this is a new chapter for you. It's the end of the year for us, for those that are on the town hall, and that will continue next year. But Alex and Stephen, thank you again for everything. You're both leaving a huge legacy, really, that won't be forgotten. And we wish you all the best. And to the others, we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Bye.